Hello and welcome everyone to this great webinar. Now my host here is Bryce Cressy from Zee, and today we're gonna find out some fantastic things regarding shipping and all the things you need when you want to dominate the marketplaces from Amazon. And I'm gonna ask Bryce here to tell us a little bit more about himself and the company. So Bryce, welcome.
Marcel, thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you so much for having me. I think I'm always absolutely thrilled to be on a webinar, whether it would be virtual or live. I think just getting the opportunity to do what I can to educate some of the knowledge that I get on an everyday basis at Zee with an e-commerce or Amazon community is always fantastic. So you're correct, my name is Bryce Cressy. I am the head of the partnerships and affiliates team at Zee. My job's quite nice because I kind of get to interact with all the different and big players in the e-commerce industry and learn about everyone's different businesses and basically hacks, tips, insights into running an e-commerce business that I guess most people don't get the opportunity to kind of witness for themselves. And I think today we're going to give, I'm going to give a little bit of an insight into what it takes to go global, to start selling your products into different markets, and just highlighting some stories of which we've seen sellers make mistakes. And no matter how simple it might be, ensuring that you have all the necessary steps in place for your business to be compliant when you start to trade into an international market. From VAT to import compliance to logistics to shipping and all those nice topics that people love to speak about. And yeah, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, that's the heavy lifting you're doing there, because usually that's the topic that I stay away from. Usually it scares me, but I'm sure that you you'll put some light into things, and yeah, let's dive into it, and yeah, let's see what we can find out, Bryce. Yeah.
Brilliant. So I'm going to share my screen. You can just let me know if I'm winning. It can sometimes be a little bit difficult.
Yep, there we go. I can see it.
Fantastic. Cool. Well, let me explain to start a little bit about Zee. So we are an e-commerce importer of record and turnkey import specialist for established e-commerce sellers. We are focused on ensuring a seller is compliant through every part of their global expansion, giving them the ability to trade freely and legally in any markets through logistics, tax, and import compliance assistance, allowing them to focus on the stuff that really matters. And what we found is many sellers may be and are hesitant about the daunting task that is going global. But I guess this is what this webinar is for. And I'm hoping when we are done here, the audience will be able to better understand the steps needed when expanding internationally. Having worked with hundreds of sellers here at Zee, we understand that growing your business is your #1 priority. In my experience, there are basically 2 overarching ways a seller can do this. The first one is expanding their product range. The second one is expanding their markets scale, selling into more markets. Today, I'm going to share 3 stories where sellers try to expand their business into other e-commerce marketplaces. So we'll be touching on point number 2, selling into more markets. And each story will highlight how and where each seller went wrong in the process when expanding internationally, showing exactly what not to do when it is your turn to take your products abroad, and in general, avoiding costly mistakes when doing that. Does that sound okay, Marcel?
Yeah, sounds awesome. I love the storytelling, so I'm looking forward to that. I don't know if I should ask you a question now, but it's on top of my mind, and I don't want to miss it. So what is an importer of record, and do we need one? Is that like, I've heard you mention it, and I've never been into this, and I'm sure that yeah, that might be.
Yeah. So it's a great question. Before moving to Zee, I also didn't know what an imports of record was, and it's one of those things that not everyone knows about. But if you want to do things right, it's a good thing that you do know about the functions of an imports of record. And I'll go into it more into detail later on in the presentation.
Perfect.
But an imports of record is basically a physical entity that takes legal responsibility of an e-commerce seller or any company's goods at customs. So they will pay the duties and taxes at customs, and they'll also be legally responsibility for any audits that happen at customs. So an importer of record can be an e-commerce seller themselves. They can act as an importer of record in a certain country if they have a physical entity and director set up in that country. We can also get an importer of record that is the end consumer. So if an e-commerce seller bears the duties and taxes cost on the end consumer, say for instance, they are drop shipping, the end consumer will have to pay the duties and taxes. We see that very often. It's one of the more, I want to say easy ways, but it's also very expensive. And it's obviously not a great customer experience for them having to pay the duties and taxes at customs.
Yeah.
And then the third option, and that is what Zee is we specialize in imports of record services because we have entities set up all around the globe. And we, as an importer of record, will take responsibility for the goods at customs. We will pay the duties and taxes for a seller so that their customer doesn't have to, so that they don't have to. We take on the risk at customs for that imports. And I guess that's the beauty of an imports of record. It's giving the risk to a different third party and also allowing a better customer experience for imports of record services.
That's incredible because I've been like a customer and I had to do the customs declarations and everything and to take everything on my side, and I didn't like it. So if that can be taken off a customer's shoulder, I imagine it's incredible, let's say a buying experience. And in the end, this is what we're trying to offer our customers, the easiness of one-click purchase and nothing else to do, because easy way out.
Exactly. And it's not only like a good experience for the customer, but it also allows an e-commerce seller to store goods in a foreign country and creates a local fulfillment model, which also allows quicker time to fulfillment of orders to end consumer in that country. And they don't have to wait for an international shipment. All they'll be waiting is the order to be filled and sent to the warehouse, whether it be a third-party logistics warehouse, fulfillment center, or an Amazon FBA center. And those goods are shipped often between 1 to 3 days, depending on the provider, depending on if it's Amazon Prime, and what the story is there. But I think if we get into the story side of things, let's talk about the first story. The first seller, I think we'll just give him a name of Mark. He is a US-based e-commerce seller that sells bicycles domestically on Amazon.com, so in the USA. After some research, he discovers a massive market for bikes in Europe, and that Germany is the perfect place for trialing his product internationally. He knows that Germany is the second largest Amazon marketplace outside of the USA, and that success there would have a tremendous effect on his profit margins. So then Mark sets up his Amazon Seller Central account to sell into Germany. In his excitement, he packages 5 bicycles and sends them straight to the Amazon FBA warehouse in Germany. He contacts a freight forwarder to take his goods across to Germany, but the German authorities do not allow the goods to pass through customs when they arrive. So naturally, Mark is a little bit bewildered. The main problem is that Mark failed to realize that his entity and products were not compliant to pass Germany's borders and was seized at the border as a result. I guess the summary of this one is that this demonstrates the importance of nailing entity and product compliance the first time when moving products into a new country. So getting it right the first time so that every other shipment into a new country, you kind of follow the same steps, the same procedures, and you remain compliant on every single shipment. Mark should have ensured that his business met the regulations and that he had the required licenses or documents to import into Germany. He assumed that because his company could sell in the US, that there would be no issues when selling elsewhere, which is actually a common mistake that sellers make. There are several requirements that Mark's business must meet to be entity compliant. Germany, for example, is one of the many countries that require foreign sellers to be registered for VAT. So for those US-based sellers that might be watching this, VAT is value-added tax. If you are a UK or an EU seller, you're all but aware of that and the implications that came, especially post-Brexit. VAT is a tax on consumer expenditure collected on business transactions, imports, and goods between countries. Each VAT charge is dependent on the importing country and has different importers' requirements. And parts of the VAT registration process within the EU also requires the seller to have an 𝗍𝗄𝗎 number. I also didn't quite know before I joined Zee what 𝗍𝗄𝗎 number stands for, but it actually stands for Economic Operators Registration and Identification Number. But it's more commonly just known as an 𝗍𝗄𝗎 number because that's quite a mouthful.
Yeah, definitely.
And this number is basically needed for businesses and individuals who want to import and trade into any European country. Mark, in this instance, did not have a VAT or 𝗍𝗄𝗎 number before sending his goods to Germany and thus failed to be entity compliant. Another issue that he probably ran into is that his product, bicycles, were not compliant with Germany's regulations. Product compliance refers to documents or safety procedures that a product must follow and comply with to be imported successfully. He didn't obtain the necessary compliance documents required by German safety standards and thus failed to be compliant. And as an importer, Mark needs to understand that he is responsible for ensuring that all of his products he places on the markets are safe and legal to sell. So that was Mark's story. He was that close to this. Poor Mark.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. There are certain mistakes when importing that can be easily avoided if you've done your research or if you work with a partner or a partner such as intelliRANK that has partners that can help in these scenarios.
Yeah, I'm totally supporting this because with every entrepreneur, I know that time is essential, and we're trying to know it all. Actually, that's what we were taught in school, to know everything about every little aspect. But what I think I realized personally is that I should always reach out to the experts in the marketplace. So in this case, if let's say I want to launch a new product, I go to intelliRANK. If I want to know more about what I need to land into the European marketplace, because it's really a mess out there, and it's a lot of paperwork and things like the VAT and 𝗍𝗄𝗎 and stuff like that. I wouldn't know where to start from. So personally, I value my time, and I like to delegate things to the people that do this on a daily basis. Why? Because first of all, you can run into different types of problems, and you don't want to, each time you bump into a wall to search and research and try to find all the answers, because the guys at Zee already ran into all the problems. If there were any problems, they fought the process, and they know it inside out, and they're doing it on a daily basis. And that's what's the important factor here. And this is saving me time, and saving me time to be creative, to dedicate my time in the area that I'm good at. Right. So, yeah, in this case, Mark was, let's say, trying to do things the easy way. But I think from the legal perspective, not knowing things will not make you like unsolvable of doing wrong things. So it's always important to get informed. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think like when launching a new product, It's a very exciting stage of the business. And you just want to get your products out to the market. You want to start selling, you want to start making money. And often that enthusiasm, which is fantastic, which builds a business, can also be its downfall when you take a little bit less time to research, I want to say in this case, the new country's laws and regulations and what is required. And that can actually hurt you in the long run.
Definitely. Yeah. But let's see with 𝗬𝗐. Maybe 𝗬𝗐 has a different type of story, or
For sure. So 𝗬𝗐's story, it kind of takes us to the United Kingdom now, where 𝗬𝗐 is selling pet toothbrushes quite successfully and actually makes over £1 million a year as an Amazon seller, which is quite impressive for pet toothbrushes, but I guess it's quite a niche market.
Yeah.
She hears from a friend in France that pet accessories are becoming popular amongst French pet owners. And after some research, she finds a gap in the Amazon France marketplace. 𝗬𝗐 is more informed than Mark, and she knows that she has to ensure that her business and pet toothbrushes are compliant for selling in France. Hence, she has already successfully obtained her VAT and IORI number and is ready to import into France. A side note about France is that it's fantastic for VAT deferment. So often importing into France is actually quite advantageous because you don't actually have to pay import VAT when you are importing into France. It's one of the few countries in Europe that allows that. But that's just a side note. If we go back to 𝗬𝗐, she, in her shipping process, organizes with a courier to air freight her products straight into France on priority shipping with all the proper compliance documents. She finds a great logistics partner to help her get her goods into France, and they promise that they will pay her duties and taxes. 𝗬𝗐 does not realize the financial loss. First of all, she is undertaken by shipping priority through air courier. It's very expensive. Air freight is usually much faster than sea or road, but it comes with a heavy price tag. Many sea shipments can take around a month to arrive, while air generally takes around 10 days. If time is of the essence, then some companies also opt for a fast courier service to ensure that their goods are delivered within a few days, while land and air transports are usually best for lighter, smaller shipments, where time is of the essence, while sea freight is better for large, heavy goods. 𝗬𝗐, in this instance, could have opted for her products to be transported on road or sea to raise her profit margin. Once her goods arrive in France after their costly flights across the English Channel, 𝗬𝗐's goods are seized at customs. She cannot understand why this is so, especially after ensuring her entity and products are compliant. 𝗬𝗐 has also made 𝗬𝗐 in this instance has made the categorical error of not realizing that she would need an importer of record to ensure that she was import compliant in France when the goods arrived. As we spoke about earlier, this step is one of the most crucial yet overlooked steps in the import process. I guess the question is, why does it matter to have an importer of record?
Yeah.
But it's quite simple. Do you think Amazon, for example, can act as an importer of record for your goods or any other e-commerce platform, Marcel? Do you think Amazon acts as an importer of record?
No, I don't know. Probably in the US it does. To be honest, I don't know about the importer of record. I just heard about it like earlier when you explained it.
Yeah. So the answer is actually no. Amazon, including fulfillment centers and generally any other e-commerce platform, will not serve as an importer of record for any shipment. Amazon don't want to take on that risk. They've got far too many risks to account for themselves that they don't want to take on the risk for every single import into a country. Because if those risks pay out and there are issues at imports, Amazon are the people who are liable for it. So basically, any shipment attempting to enter an Amazon marketplace with Amazon as the IOR will be refused and returned at the shipper's expense, and there are no exceptions in this regard.
So the importer of record needs to be set whenever, let's say, we're using a freight company, right? So the actual logistics company will have to act and, I don't know, be the importer of record because, yeah, in the US.
Some freight forwarding companies do act as the importer of record, but a lot of them refuse to, just because it comes with that added risk that if they don't actually know what's in those containers, and there's an audit and they checked and there's something wrong, then that freight forwarder is liable. So on any imports, there needs to be someone listed as the importer of record. In German, it's called 𝗵𝗪𝗁. And that is generally, as I said, either the customer or it is that the e-commerce seller, it's the merchant if they are based in that country, or it is a third-party company such as Zee who does the compliance work to handle that risk, and it pays off for the end seller by having a third party take ownership of that.
Okay, yeah, that's
but I think
it's definitely something I'll have to check on my side as well, because I don't know what the team is doing for the US part, but I've never heard them applying for an importer of record so far, or probably they're doing it. I don't know. Yeah, that could happen also. So yeah.
I think the US is a little bit more, they can be more flexible with importer of record. I know that for a lot of fulfillment companies in the US, they cannot get their goods into storage, into that warehouse, if there isn't a company on that listed on that IOR, on the commercial invoice. That's why we partner with a lot of fulfillment houses in the US, so that we can help them get goods into their storage facilities. So generally, there's probably someone acting as the importer of record in that instance. It's just a matter of who.
Right.
But I mean, going back to the need for an importer of record, I think it's clear why an importer of record is essential when expanding into global markets. An importer of record, as I previously stated, can be any locally registered entity in the destination country. And by a registered entity, we mean someone with a local tax registration who is happy to be held responsible for imported goods as the importer and makes sure that the distribution center accepts it. An IOR also works with customs officials to document and value the goods and produce payments for duties, fees, and tariffs on your behalf. Ali's goods, in this instance, unfortunately did not reach the warehouse in France and were returned back to the UK. And in this instance, after this ordeal, Ali decided she would rather sell locally, an opportunity that was quickly seized by another Amazon seller who knew how to use an IOR. So that was Ali's story.
Lost a lot of money in the process, shipping everything fast, but yeah, not knowing everything that implies selling on the France marketplace.
Yeah, but we do see the instances where they do ship fast. As I said, they also are a bit enthusiastic, and then it gets caught at customs, and then it has to be returned to their warehouse, which is another expense that the seller must bear. So it's almost like a double whammy.
Can you maybe, I don't know, I'm just brainstorming a bit here. In this case, can you send it to a different warehouse, maybe within that country, for example, in France, or you have to return it to sender? I'm just curious.
It would be returned to sender, because France won't accept it. If it's stuck at customs and there's no one taking responsibility and working at customs, it won't get through customs, and therefore it won't be able to get into any storage center, where it is an Amazon FBA, whether it is a third-party logistics warehouse. It will generally either be held at customs or it will be returned to sender.
And I have another question. In that particular instance, when Ali found out that she's not compliant, if she would have reached out to Zee, for example, would Zee be able to do everything from that point on, or that would have been too late to fix things even for you guys?
No. So one of our biggest lead sources comes from stuck shipments at customs. Right. So it's people reaching out to us too late. They're already getting fines at customs. Some of their customers are experiencing a little bit of a bad experience because they're not actually getting their their end goods once they've been ordered.
Yeah.
So we do clear stuck shipments. It obviously is a bit more of a premium service because stuck shipments come with their own issues, and it's very timely. Like the seller wants to get their shipments unstuck like yesterday.
Yeah.
So we prefer sellers to reach out to us before the shipment gets stuck. But if it does get stuck, we are happy to kind of jump in and help it get unstuck.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, because I'm thinking in Alice's case, she spent a lot of money to get the shipment by air to the France marketplace, and getting it back might have been a lot of money again, and yeah, it would have been easier just to fix things there. And I would pay the premium price with Zee just to get things sorted, because like you said, enthusiasm, and I know what I want. I want the shipment to reach the Amazon warehouse or the third-party logistics in France, and I want it to be on the marketplace. I don't want to step back. I want to move forward. So yeah, it's
Exactly.
good to know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I do hope Steve is the right guy here. I hope.
I guess we'll find out.
Well,
So this story takes us to down under, to Australia, where Steve sells kangaroo jumpers.
Right.
He's been quite successful on Amazon Australia, and one day on his seller Facebook group, he comes across a post that shows that the Japanese have started wearing kangaroo jumpers to high-end events, to like fancy luxury events. And Steve decides to jump at this opportunity and looks to sell into the Japanese markets. He makes sure that his entity and products are compliant with Japanese regulations, and that his products are packaged and labeled in accordance with Amazon Japan specifications. Side note, Amazon Japan can be difficult. Luckily for Steve, he sees on his Facebook group that he needs an importer of record to ensure that his products safely get to the end warehouse. Steve ensures that he has all of this before arranging the delivery of his goods to the warehouse. Steve books his goods on sea freight into Japan, which generally would take between 1 to 2 weeks. Steve's goods then arrive safely in the warehouse and sell out in record time. Steve is ecstatic. Cheers to Steve.
But I feel it's a but.
It's always a but. No. Just in this example, Steve is ecstatic, and he cannot wait to send new stock to Japan. He asks his friend who works for a tax firm to help him organize his documents to claim back his import VAT or JCT, which is the Japanese form of indirect tax. This will be a massive help in funding his new stock purchase, that influx of capital. Steve is not aware of how precisely organized his documents need to be to reclaim this VAT successfully, and the tax authorities reject his friend's attempt. As a result, Steve loses out on a large amount of capital that he could have reinvested in his business. This severely limits the stock that he can buy and puts him on the back foot moving forward. Because of this, Steve was down under, and he could have easily claimed back the VAT if he had the right VAT partner to help him. So Steve was that close, and that's basically, it's another aspect that people don't actually realize, that you can claim back your import VAT. It is not a sunk cost. If you submit your documents correctly, you can get back the tax that you are paying on import. It sometimes, depending on the country, can be 2 months, 3 months, 6 months down the line, but 6 months is better than not getting it back at all.
Yeah, we can agree to that. Like
yes, yeah.
Something is better than nothing, some might say.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But I guess summarizing what we've spoken about, Marcel, we briefly touched on the need for import VAT reclaim services. But something that didn't come up is the need to have a local VAT registration in countries that you are holding stock in and selling in that market.
Right.
It must be known that if you want to fulfill from a country, whether it is Amazon FBA or it is a local fulfillment center, you will need a VAT registration in that country. And if you want to fulfill through Europe, for example, you will also need to add an OSS registration for that. OSS stands for one-stop shop, and it basically allows you to trade freely across Europe. All you need is a one normal country VAT registration, as well as an OSS registration, and you can start selling compliantly throughout the EU. It's quite a lucrative way to do business, and the EU's have basically made it a lot cheaper for people to do business across the EU if you are either based in the EU or if you are holding stock in the EU.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's great insight and great information. Thank you for that, Bryce. I do have a couple of questions, if we can jump into that.
Yes.
So why is it important to be pre-compliant? Why do you think, and this is something for all the Amazon sellers out there, to get things ready prior to ending up like the stories that we've heard so far, which are not so happy, but from which we can definitely learn a lot of things. Thank you for that, and thank you for Mark, Ellie, and Steve for sharing their experiences with us today.
Yeah. So when it comes to pre-compliance, I like to look at it like having all your ducks in a row, so that when you are ready to start expanding globally, you can kind of pull the trigger immediately. So ensuring pre-compliance is ensuring that your products are compliant. So they have the correct registration, the correct documents, you have the correct authorized representatives in the country to accept your products. Ensuring that they are labeled correctly, ensuring that you have your tax registration done. Because if you are looking to, say for instance, start trading into Germany, and you aren't based in the EU, there's a good chance it'll take your VAT registration more than 2 months to come through. And if you're looking to get into that EU country like ASAP, you're going to kind of be a little bit frustrated when you have to wait 2 months to start that import process. So if you kind of go through that process of pre-compliance, ensuring that you have your tax registrations, ensuring that your products are compliant, ensure that your entity is compliant, then when you're ready to pull the trigger and go for it, there's nothing to stop you. There's nothing to delay your sales in the new country. So ensuring that pre-compliance is the first step to be an experienced, knowledgeable, and successful seller into a new market.
That's a good way forward, I might say. And it's very important for every Amazon seller to take into consideration if we're not looking to lose any more money in the process, because dominating new marketplaces is a good way to expand, but it comes with risks. And if we don't know the risks, it's either time or money or both that we have to pay with. So sometimes doing our due diligence pays off. And
for sure. And I know post Brexit as well, a lot of sellers are confined to either the UK or to the EU, and that flow of goods between the EU and the UK is disrupted. But again, ensuring that pre-compliance and having the tax registration and the ORI number, as well as the IOR in place, can substitute that delay, that gap. It can be the bridge to that free-flowing goods movement between the EU and UK after Brexit.
Would it be a good idea to set up like a physical entity in case, let's say, we're aiming to move to a new marketplace within that marketplace, or is that something harder, or how shall we look at it?
So I guess if an e-commerce seller really wants to set up a physical entity and act as their own IOR, we won't stop them. We just find that setting up a physical entity, if you're just looking to sell on that market, is a lot of admin. It's a lot of effort. You need to hire directors in that country. You need to have feet on the ground. So you're going to have to go through a serious amount of processes to get that set up. A shortcut is using an imports of record, using a third party to set up that physical entity. But again, there are benefits to having a physical entity for long term. So it may be going through the hassle for 2 years or so to get the entity set up. But then once it's set up, you can be good to go. You can accept your own goods. But what we're finding even is that having an importer of record, even if you have a physical entity. So if there's a seller that's based in the UK and also has physical presence in Germany, they can still use a third party as an importer of record. And that's just to work with customs, to clear customs in an efficient manner, because importer of record isn't only just the name of the document. It is the knowledge and the know-how of how to fill out those documents correctly to ensure that that everything clears customs in a precise and efficient manner. It's that feet on the ground, it's that inside man that'll basically help with a smoother import process.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, makes sense. So yeah, in the end, it's important to get the best out of everything, and some people might want to set up their own physical entities, but yeah, depends on the situation, and yeah, in the end of each, whatever everyone likes to do, yeah, and based on their business plan. Yeah. Can you defer like import VAT in the EU? Is that something you can do, like, for example?
Yep. There are, from my understanding, 2 countries which you can do it in at the moment. There is a lovely document called Article 23 in the Netherlands that allows you to defer your import VAT obviously on imports, and allows for either a third party to be responsible for that import VAT and pay it on your behalf, and then they would receive it back at a certain period, but it also allows a seller not to pay the import VAT on importation of their goods. Another country is France. They have an import VAT deferment scheme most recently. They were the most recent country to do that. And both of these countries, it's basically a way for them to incentivize flow of goods through their ports, through their countries, and make it easier for sellers to start trading in and throughout the EU. And yeah, these countries are often the best to go in through from a cash flow perspective, from a liquidity perspective, because you aren't paying that I want to say that big expense that import VAT imposes on a seller on importation. So it's a way to get around selling quite expensively initially, because you obviously have that cash flow relievance on imports.
Yeah. That's perfect, Bryce. I think you convinced me. I think I'm ready to move forward. So please let everyone know, how can we get in touch with Zee, and yeah, let us know how can we reach you.
Yeah, so you're more than welcome to, the audience is more than welcome to reach me at 𝗪𝗫𝗁@zee.co. That's BRYCEC@zee.co. Or they can just find me on LinkedIn at Bryce Cressy. I think I am the only Bryce Cressy on LinkedIn. And I'm sure we can also post a link to our contact us form when this webinar is shared. So any 3 of those ones work. But again, I'm very much available most days, most hours. So LinkedIn or email.
So what's the process? So for example, people will just reach out to you and you'll start with a consultation, or yeah, just find out more about their problem or what they want to do. Is there something like an audit that you're doing for them? What would be the first step?
So the first step is basically a consultation.
Mm-hmm.
So we will find out, once they've reached out to us, we'll organize a Zoom call with them or whatever, and find out, 1, what products are they looking to sell? 2, where are they looking to sell it? 3, what the current registration documents do they have? What labels do they have? What certifications, what responsible persons do they have? So basically seeing if they are pre-compliant. If they are not, we'll basically do a gap analysis for them to understand exactly what needs to occur. Then we will get the ball rolling on that element. At the same time, if they do not have tax registration set up in the country, we will start that process for them, communicate with the tax officers to get that done. Then once they are compliant, their products are good to go, their tax registrations are set up, we will start the import process for them. We will quote them. We will understand what their priority is from a freight perspective, their timelines, and we'll basically make sure that they are set up with the correct carrier, with the correct freight forwarder, on discounted pricing that we are able to obtain through our partnerships, and then we get them shipping. I think it's as simple as that. Generally, they come to us with their problem. We will do everything to solve that problem. There's very little that a seller has to do on their end, because our team is fantastic in terms of turnaround times, in terms of customer service. So we act as problem solvers for their imports and for their compliance, for their global expansion, basically.
That's awesome. We'll add the contact information and everything in the description below. Bryce, it's been very enlightening. I loved the presentation. Perfect. We have also here the information available on the screen. If there's anything else you'd like to add, it's been really, I want to personally thank you for this presentation. It's been very knowledgeable. And yeah, I guess if nothing else, we can close it here, and we'll let the people reach out to you, and I'm sure we can take it from there. And yeah.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Marcel. Really appreciate the platform that you've given us. And yeah, if anyone else who's listening to this also wants to have a look at intelliRANK and Marcel and what he has to say about his business, you can check out our podcast, Easy E-commerce. I'm not quite sure if the episode would have been posted by then, but having Marcel as a guest was fantastic. And he really adds some insight to the world of product launching himself.
Thank you very much. We can add the link here in the description below as well. So yeah, thank you, Bryce, and yeah, have a great day ahead.
Thanks, Marcel. Appreciate it.